teacher asked, what is the fastest known force in the universe? And everybody said, light. And he said, no. He said, mind. We can travel from here to the outer galaxies in a moment in the mind. It'll take years by light.
Can what we think affect the reality around us? What would you do if you had the tools to change reality? Reality isn't as real as one might imagine.
Reality is a concept. You know, reality is an idea.
Is a successful person's reality the same as an unsuccessful person's reality?
It really depends on what time in history and who's perceiving it and what their belief systems are.
Is a rich person's reality the same as a pauper?
Now, if you're a scientist in the 21st century or in the modern age, you have a tremendous bias towards physical reality. Reality is things.
A student comes to a Zen master and tells him that he wants to study with him. And the Zen master says to him, what is it that you want? The student says, not a Lexus, not fancy shoes. The student says, the truth.
Now, in a Buddhistic perspective, things are ultimately interconnected and empty.
You want the truth, says the master, come with me. And he takes the boy down to a stream near his house, and he tells him to kneel, and the boy kneels, and he pushes his head under the water until the poor kid almost drowns.
That there is nothing there, so to speak. There, as you kind of start looking at what things are, the reality kind of disappears. It's almost a mental idea.
He pulls him up. When the boy gets his breath back, the Zen master says to him, when I had your head under the water, what was it that you wanted? The boy says, air. The master says, well, when you want the truth as much as you just wanted air, come back to me.
In reality, there is no reality. In this episode, we're going to look at the initiatory level that corresponds to the element of air. Alchemical air corresponds in the tarot to the suit of swords, and in the human condition, the intellect. Looking at the Yod-He-Vav-He formula as initiations, the Vav represents the mind, or the idea behind all form in the universe.
You talk about the tarot deck and the element of air and its association with the suit of swords. Now you look at swords in the tarot, you say, well, that's kind of a militaristic, violent sort of thing. What does that have to do with air and intellect? Well, everything.
It's often asked, why are swords representative of the element of air and the power of the intellect?
The sword is not a literal tool so much as a symbol. And it's a symbol of sharpness, of precision, of reduction, of analysis. It is really the functioning of the intellect.
A sword is an instrument of discrimination. Bring it down upon something and it separates one side from the other, separating truth from fiction, separating right from left, separating good from evil.
Now the intellect is associated with the element of air. Is that because the air is rich in thought? No. We're not talking about the air as we commonly talk about in the modern world, we're talking about the region of experience that's air-like. Now, in this sword, this sword represents also the word prajna in Sanskrit is a word that means wisdom and sword. And it's a great indication of how words come into language and how wisdom is associated with the weapon of, the symbol of the sword. It is a way of intelligence, like a scalpel, the ability to apply precision, a human intervention, a tool that's able to refine and cut through things, is associated with the element air.
Mastering the mind is the second step in the initiatory process.
Until somebody convinces you that you are asleep, you don't believe it, and no matter how much you read about it, in fact, very intelligent and gifted people, talented people, are often the hardest to convince. They don't want to know that they're asleep.
Most people don't know what a thought is. What most people define as thoughts are really opinions about their emotions. Very few people really exist in the world of thought. Unless you're a philosopher or a mathematician, you're still living in what the Hindus would call kama manas, which is desire mind. This is this mental commentary on your emotional existence.
When you realize that you are asleep, in that state of sleep, that's where all the buttons get pressed, because you have no defenses. So in that state of sleep, you are a slave, even if you've just won the Nobel Prize or are the richest man in the world, or whatever your material position may be, you're asleep.
But when you get up into real thought, you get into a clarity where you can really operate above whatever's going on in the tidal life of your emotions or your activity.
And in order to wake up, first, you have to not want to be asleep. You have to seriously not want your buttons to be pressed. And then, if you're lucky, and you set out in the right way, maybe you can start waking up at least a little bit.
When you begin to reach that clarity, you can then bring that clarity down into those emotions. You've created new thoughts, new ways of being, of responding. You are acting rather than reacting to the things that are going on in your life. At that moment, when you're in that corner, you can say, I don't have to do this. I can choose. I can consciously choose to do something else. And that acquisition of that point of choice is really what the mental training is about. It's being the actor, again, rather than the reactor in one's life. It's being the causative force rather than being a victim.
The big problem is the illusion that we are one person, and that what makes a decision to do one thing, 2 minutes later, something else comes along that says, you don't want to do that, let's go have a beer. So the big problem is, of course, ourselves. Our attention is divided because we are divided. We want one thing when we're cutting the onion, and another thing when we're with a girlfriend, and still something else when we're talking to the boss, and something else altogether again when we're stuck in rush hour. So all of these different aspects of our own personality are warring with each other often. They're not in concord. So part of the problem, or let's say the major part of the problem, is to get all of those disparate characters to cooperate insofar as that's possible. But that's not easy. This is a big problem.
There is a specific body of technique that involves the integration of the physical self, the emotional self, and the mental self, so that they don't fight one another, so that they work in unison. The great Western symbol for this is the symbol of Hercules. In the East, they have the character of Arjuna from the Bhagavad Gita. This is the warrior in the chariot pulled by 3 horses. And the 3 horses are all pulling in different directions, so they can't go anywhere. And the 3 horses symbolize the physical self, the emotional self, the mental self. And once you integrate them and have them all going in the same direction, then you can move somewhere. Another example of this would be for Freemasons, the 3 ruffians that deliver the killing blows to the candidate. These are symbolic of the 3 bodies. Another example in old fairy tales would be the 3 levels of Cinderella. In the old Cinderella stories, there were 3 balls, and the first dress was spun of moonlight, and the second dress of sunlight, and the third and final dress of starlight. It all stands for the 3 levels of the personality: the physical, the emotional, and the mental self. Most people have not yet reached the place where their personality is integrated. It's like those 3 horses pulling the chariot, but they're all going in different directions. What the physical body wants, what the emotions want, what the mind wants are not always the same thing at all. You know, you step out of the shower one night and you take a look at yourself in the mirror and you say, I've got to go on a diet. And you make that decision. But then the next day, when the spaghetti passes you by, a different part of you makes a different decision. Because what the emotions want, and what the mind wants, and what the physical body wants, don't always match. So again, part of the work is getting all 3 bodies to work together, to have a consensus, or at least to have a designated leader. In some life situations, you might designate the mind to make the decision. In other situations, it might be the physical that needs to make the decision. The point is conscious choice.
The mind, as with other bodies, is subject to the rules of alignment. It adds a new layer of meaning to the old adage, divided we fall.
Whether you consciously or unconsciously are aware of it, you are constantly manifesting with the secret 24 hours a day, whatever your values are.
Before the mind can be used in concert with the other bodies, it must be aligned with itself, unified.
Every human being has a set of values, and whatever's highest on their values where their order and discipline is and focus is, whatever's lowest on their values where their chaos and undiscipline and unfocus is. That's why it's so important to make sure you set your objectives in alignment and congruent with those values, because when you do, you maximize your potential. Because we have a left brain, when that tends to put things into series, our values are put into a structure, a series structure. So we're always making decisions based on what's most important at that moment. If all of a sudden our keys are missing, then that moves up to the top and we make decisions according to what we think is most missing and most important in our life. Whatever's most missing becomes most important. Our voids drive our values. Now, whatever that value is at any one moment in our life, we could call that, because most people are not conscious of it, it's our unconscious. Now, whatever we've injected into ourselves from outside authorities that we think we want, I'm going to call that, whatever we're consciously searching for, could be that. When our conscious does not match our unconscious, there's incongruency, and there's a conflict, and the unconscious will always win. Now, some people call it the subconscious. I like to call it the unconscious, because it's really what's based on our true value systems and how we see the world and act upon the world. All decisions at any split second is being based upon those value systems. So their life is completely demonstrating their values 24 hours a day. Now what happens is, as they go through life, sometimes they subordinate themselves and minimize themselves relative to people who they think have more than them. Maybe they think somebody has more wealth than them, or more intelligence than them, or more spiritual awareness. Or maybe they think that they're more successful, or maybe they have a better relationship, or maybe they're more socially connected, or maybe they have better looks. Anytime they tend to minimize themselves relative to somebody else and subordinate themselves to them, they tend to inject other people's values into their life and try to be more like them. Emerson said, envy is ignorance and imitation is suicide. Because instead of being authentic to ourselves, we start to be somebody we're not. When we do, we consciously think, I want to do this. But our unconscious, which is based on our real values, keep making us do what's truly in our value system. So anytime we consciously try to go off in a direction that's not matching our unconscious, there's an incongruency. Now, one of the signs of incongruency is you hear yourself inwardly or even outwardly, vocally, saying, I should be doing this, I've got to be doing this, I need to be doing this, I'm supposed to be doing this, which are all languages of imperatives and outside authorities. When somebody's congruent, they say, I love doing what I do. I'm inspired by it. This is what I've always dreamed of. Because now their values and their actions are congruent. The word fulfillment is directly proportional to how well those are congruent. So when you feel fulfilled and grateful for life, they're congruent. And so there is a difference, there's a distinction, and there is a magic, but that magic is something that actually has a science to it, and it's basically having congruency between what you say you want and the values that you hold. And knowing your values, to me, is really crucial if you really want to manifest things.
Aligning our conscious and unconscious minds, understanding ourselves enough to be able to distinguish the deeper drives from artificially injected values is an important first step. The mind can be thought of as a lens that can direct our attention inward as well as outward. An important part of the mysteries was learning to focus the mind inward, even focusing the mind on itself. Many allegories of the mystery traditions focus on teaching the student how to prepare each of our four bodies in service of building the temple.
What in esoteric studies and practice we try to do is to focus more on the inner building, on the inner temple, because then you're working from the inside out, and that's the only way change can be effected. Whether you're trying to change yourself, whether you're trying to change a relationship, whether you're trying to change a country, until you change the inside and the frequency, the vibratory note of the entity, you can mess up the outside all you want to, but it's going to go back into that same shape once its own note is sounded again. So until you change its note, its frequency, it's going to outpicture the same way. It's not going to do you any good to work on the outside. So until we change the inside, the outside will keep outpicturing the inside. And that's why inner work is so important in esoterics, is because we understand the process of creation, that it is from the inside out. That the dot in the center, the core, the heart, is what creates the entity and how it looks and how it reacts and how it acts to the world outside it. There is an interesting psychological aspect to the fact that the people who brought down Hiram Abiff are often called ruffians. And in Masonic tradition, and you can find this just out in the open as well, there are two stones. One is called the rough ashlar, and the other is the finished ashlar. Basically, it's a stone with rough edges, and the other is a stone that has been finished. It is planed. It has fine, straight surfaces and edges. Point being that a lot of our psychological aspects are rough until we apply conscious thinking to them, until we apply discipline, until we apply temperance, until perhaps we are taught and coached by others in how to do that. So ruffians, the rough ashlar, I think it is symbolic of what is often called in the mystery schools those things that trip us up on our way to enlightenment, when my favorite phrase for that is the dwellers on the threshold. It's like you are so ready to go be enlightened, but first you got to get past your own stuff. The dwellers on the threshold that are between you and where you want to be. And that's your bad habits, tendencies, misconceptions, prejudices, unrefined parts of yourself. And it is through working with conscious deliberation that we can then begin to turn those ruffians within into something that is refined and can work for us and for others.
Building the temple of God, stone by stone, step by step. Not only does it deal with the initiatory process, it deals with the details of that initiatory process. As if every element of our life is a rough stone that needs to be smoothed and trued and squared in order that it may become a valuable and integral part of our temple. It must be done step by step, stone by stone. And it means knocking off the rough edges of not only our bodies, but our minds and our emotions. We all know the effects of a chance thought. We can have a chance thought, an idea that all of a sudden turns into an invention or a great new movement. Now, if a chance thought can create such change in the world, what potential power can there be in a fixed thought? Part of the initiatory level of air is learning to fix the thought. In mysticism, the ability to hold a particular object or concept in the mind to the exclusion of all other thoughts, objects, or concepts is the key to raising one's consciousness. If a chance thought can create and change the world, a fixed thought can move the universe. That's why so many initiatory systems require the candidate to master these techniques of meditation in order to raise step by step their consciousness.
So in esoteric tradition, one of the greatest bodies of how to do it techniques is the subject of meditation. And much of what is called meditation out in the marketplace is not true meditation at all. They are much more beginning kinds of techniques. There's a difference between the categories of relaxation, visualization, concentration, and what real meditation is. Relaxation techniques do a lot of great things for you. It lowers blood pressure, it mitigates against the effects of stress. It would be great for the average individual. There's no spiritual commitment involved or any particular system involved in relaxation techniques. It involves slowing your breathing, perhaps imagining yourself to be in a nice quiet place, and it doesn't really do a lot more than that. The next category, visualization, is much more interesting. Visualization targets primarily the emotions. If relaxation techniques have their primary effect upon the physical body, visualization techniques have their primary effect upon the emotions. But visualization is exactly that. It's making pictures in the head. And ideally, study in visualization is not just going into a fantasy world. You know, you can imagine yourself on a beach or in a beautiful scene, and you can imagine guides or animals. These are ways of getting in touch with your subconscious, bringing the subconscious to life. And that can be very valuable, but it's not spiritual unfoldment. And certainly there are techniques out there that help you focus your emotions and the power of the emotions to draw whatever you want into your life, whether it be money or mates or, you know, whatever it happens to be. But this is, again, not necessarily spiritual practice. So most of the techniques that are out there are visualization techniques at one level or another, ethical or not. The next category of techniques has to do with training for the mind, and this is vital. If relaxation deals with the physical body, if visualization deals with the emotions, concentration deals with mental activity. And this is not the intellect. This is not what esotericists would call the lower concrete mind. That kind of mind that gets stuck and thinks it's all important and denies the emotions. It's not that kind of cut-off mind. But concentration is a mental discipline. And so you won't see it out in the marketplace. It's not popular. It's boring. And it's very hard, and people don't want to do it. People will begin a mental concentration technique. They'll find that it's too hard, and so they'll say, oh, well, I'm really more spiritually advanced than that. I don't really need to do that kind of technique. But the category of concentration is absolutely vital, because real meditation involves a trained mind. And so Concentration teaches you not only how to focus the mind, but it teaches you how to shut up. Because real meditation involves internal listening. It's not trancing out, it's not bliss, it's not passive. Real meditation is absolutely active, but it is still activeness. It is quiet activeness. And most people are talking to themselves internally 24 hours a day. You know, you keep yourself awake at night visualizing how you're going to redecorate the living room or the presentation you have to make to your boss the next day. We don't know how to be quiet. So concentration techniques involve learning how to be quiet, how to shut up the internal chatter and not fall asleep, to stay active, awake, attentive, receptive. And it's vital. It's a vital step between the mysteries of the beginner, or the outer court, and the mysteries of the inner court. And again, because these are unpopular techniques, you won't see them out in the marketplace. But that's okay, because when the person is ready, they attract themselves to whatever discipline they require for that next unfolding step. It is a growing, unfolding process of building a base and then adding techniques that add to that, and so on and so forth.
Meditation is using the mind to overcome the mind. The exercises of the Hebrew Kabbalah require the meditator, if you will, to connect everything in the universe with everything else until literally there is nothing left to connect. In this way, when we hit that divine fullness, that wonderful smooth point where everything is connected with everything else, our mind then becomes a microcosmic image of the macrocosmic consciousness. That is the Kabbalistic illumination.
And now you can begin to enter into real meditation, which is the communion between the soul and its extension in the personality. There is a gap between that immortal part of ourselves that people have called the soul or the spirit. This immortal part, this part that we truly are, is disconnected, not completely, because we're alive here, but there's a gap between the consciousness of our higher self and the consciousness of our personality focused through the brain. Meditation begins the mergence of these two parts. It is not a one-way conversation. It is not the personality just standing receptive to the abstract energy of the overshadowing soul and bringing in those spiritual energies. It is also the soul moving downward, taking incarnation into its extension. This is the divine marriage that is talked about in alchemy. It's the mergence of the overshadowing spiritual soul with its personality or persona. Persona is a Greek word that means mask, because the persona is the extension or mask or face that the soul shows to the world. So meditation begins as, first of all, setting up the wiring of communication between the overshadowing soul and the personality. This means that you have to train the brain to register more subtle messages than what it's used to carrying. The brain is involved with physical responses, it's involved with emotional responses, it's involved with levels of thought, but the touch of the soul is a finer energy, and the brain has to be taught how to be receptive to that. Then once the brain is receptive to that, then that energy has to be translated into information, into building thought forms, so that instead of going to the library out here where you get a translation of somebody's translation of somebody's translation, you go to that source that we all draw inspiration from, and you make your own fresh translation, that which is relevant to you. So meditation also involves learning. The three different parts of meditation are meditation for communion. This is meditation for sanctuary, moving into that higher life for sustenance. It's sort of like the whale that comes up for air. The whale lives in the water, and all its senses are geared toward water. It mates in water. It communicates in water. But it has to go into an alien element to breathe. Human beings are like that. We live in the mental plane and the emotional plane and the physical plane, but our life comes from the realm of the spirit. And meditation is a way of reaching up and taking a breath. So there's meditation for communion, for sustenance, for sanctuary. But there is also a second level of meditation, which is meditation for learning. Receiving those abstract energies from that higher level and then translating them. And this means training your brain to do that. Then the third category of real meditation has to do with service. Putting this built instrument in service to humanity. How can you help behind the scenes? How can you adjust negative situations? How can you bring in a finer, more spiritual quality into your own life and also into the lives of those that you touch? So meditation begins as this two-way communication, and there's a certain body of technique that teaches that. Then there's a certain body of technique that teaches the training of the brain to be that receptive pole for that overshadowing life. And then there is the training for service that we have hints of in all of the world's traditions that have stories about masters or adepts or elder brothers or spiritual beings. This is really the training of becoming a Buddha or becoming a disciple of the Christ. You know, as I have done, you shall do, and even greater things. A lot of people in the West forget that Jesus said, you know, take up your cross and follow, not give me your cross, hop on my back and I'll carry you. So all of these traditions would have these mysteries that are the beginning stages. And this is what we see in the marketplace, because this is where the mass of humanity is coming to, is approaching. But don't think that that's all there is. That's the porch of the temple. That all of these things that I've described, there are bodies of techniques and training that involve all these stages. And these stages are sequential. One builds on the previous.
One of the barriers to maintaining an alignment of ourselves is the tendency to lapse into unconscious states, or just as commonly to allow unconscious mechanical behaviors to bounce us from a higher state of mind to one based in the lower, less constructive centers. Technologies for overcoming or at least combating these mechanical aspects of ourselves were masterfully illuminated by the mysterious Russian mystic G.I. Gurdjieff.
My own background in this, of course I've been around for quite a while, so when I first got interested in this work was back when I was living on the island of Ibiza in the very early 60s, and one way or another I've been involved in, well, my own work, of course, having to do with Egypt and nonfiction and fiction alike. But I've been involved in, let's say, in this quest or on this path for all of these years, which has involved a prodigious amount of reading and thinking and practice as well, of course. And my own background is wholeheartedly Gurdjieffian. And Gurdjieff is not exactly a household word, though his work is well known. And for those who are unfamiliar with Gurdjieff, and are interested at all in what I'm saying here, the best thing to do probably is to read In Search of the Miraculous by P.D. Uspensky, arguably Gurdjieff's most gifted and articulate student, disciple if you want to call him that, which outlines and details exactly what is involved, and everything that I've been saying in this interview so far, in one way or another, is a reflection of or a development of Gurdjieff's teaching. There are certain central tenets to that. One is that we are machines entirely. We have no will of our own. Everybody always talks, oh, well, we have free will. Actually, we don't have free will. We have free will to do something that's unemotionally involved. If we can go out and buy a newspaper now, or 5 minutes from now, or 10 minutes from now, or we can decide that we're not going to turn on the computer right now and we're going to wait 10 minutes. We are not free to like somebody that we dislike, or to even react neutrally when we're insulted or attacked, or to not bask in the glow of flattery when that happens. We have effectively no free will at our disposal. It is there, but that's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Schopenhauer put it well. He said, man has free will, but not the will to use it. So we're back now to our secret of the secret, and the idea that all of this stuff is easy. All you have to do is direct your attention. Directing your attention is the hardest thing of all, and God help you if you haven't directed it towards something that's worth having.
The mysteries not only provided a portrait of the mind as it is, but a roadmap to the mind as it can be.
So in the system of initiation, as you've been talking about it here in this program, the next step that you come to is the lower mind. And this is the way that we deal with simply the world around us. It's our navigation system, if you will, for getting around the regular world. And it's perfectly fine, it can work really well, but it's not what we call higher mind, which we'll come to a little bit later. We have a lot of interesting myths and folklore that deal with this aspect of mind. And usually it's something that the trickster does to the hero of the story. And you have to figure out a riddle. You have to solve the puzzle. It's about putting usually physical things together, taking them apart, seeing how things work. Now, all of this is real handy, as you find in the myths and in the folk tales, because it helps the hero solve a puzzle that gives them a piece of the path that they're then going to go down. Or it helps them to discover or to build a tool that they're going to need to go further along the path. What it gives them then is a sense of clarity. Just as the first initiation working on the physical self gives you a sense of the vehicle that you're in and how it operates. To work then with the mind on this level gives you a sense of how to navigate the world. A couple of examples from myth of this particular step along the path of initiation that I will call lower mind. You have in, I think, the Greek myth of Odysseus, one of the best examples of this aspect of the self that needs to come under control. And with the wily Odysseus, he was very crafty, he was clever, he was the hero of the Trojan War, he invented the Trojan horse. And then on his way home to Ithaca from Troy, he spent 10 years out in the Mediterranean wandering around having all of these adventures. The way he solved all of his problems was through craftiness. He would figure out a way to navigate the world around him and the people in it by assessing where they were coming from, what they wanted, what tools were at hand that he could use. In this same sense, this is what we can learn from this particular stage of the path. So just as Ulysses was able to navigate his way home from the Trojan War by using his wiles, by being clever, by having some analytical skills of the situation at hand, so too then do we want to learn how to assess what's going on in the world around us. And we want to use our minds, our basic intellect, if you will, to control things when we can, to learn how our minds work. A lot of self-assessment is very good here. You know, take the Myers-Briggs test, you know, take the Enneagram test, work on the chakras, find out where you are operating at any particular time. And learn then more about yourself and the way your thoughts operate. One of the advantages to that is that once you learn what some of your typical trains of thought are, you can derail them before they take you to the wrong place.
Becoming the director of our thoughts is like taking the captain's wheel of our own mythic voyage. When we learn to relate to our mental operation as a sort of projector that we control and not mistake our thoughts for the actual experience of life, we begin to expand our consciousness and become aware of signals that are too subtle to hear when we identify too closely with the lower mind. This prepares the path for our eventual ability to consciously shift our perspective and point of operation from lower, logical mind to higher, inspirational mind, or to whatever center is appropriate. The mind perceives activity on all the registers, but more than just watching, the mind or consciousness seems to play some part in shaping the lower worlds. Like art, music, and the ancient art of temple building, the mysteries inform us that an important role of consciousness in a material universe is to transmute or transubstantiate the patterns of order and harmony that we perceive in the higher worlds into the manifest world.
The brain is not just a bunch of gray matter sloshing around in the skull. There is an esoteric function of the brain that is not being used by humanity yet, because humanity as a spiritual kingdom is still in its adolescence. So the brain is mostly dealing with sensory messages, survival, but that's not all that it can do. And the partnering between the spiritual or soul consciousness or higher self that is not limited by time and space, it's working through the brain, produces some pretty magical and alchemical activities.
Magic as such is the art of working with symbols to affect all three of the levels I just mentioned: matter, mind, and meaning. You can affect all of them. This is the scary thing to people in our modern society. We're willing to accept that it can affect our minds. We're willing to consider that it might be able to have some influence on meaning. But the idea that a symbol can affect matter, the idea that mental activity can affect the material world, terrifies us. We don't want to hear it. Now, does it happen? Of course it does. Anytime you lift your hand and scratch your nose, Your mind is causing physical matter to move. But we try to pretend that that's not happening. And we certainly try to pretend that it can't happen outside the limits of the skin.
The brain is what esotericists call the form-making instrument in the three lower worlds. The brain makes thought forms, it makes feeling forms, but it also has a profound effect on the physicality of matter.
You can have effects on a surprising range of the subtle relationships of matter. You can tinker with things and get effective results through magical practice.
And this is what's being looked at in the new physics, where we see, is something a wave or is it a particle? It can behave as both. What makes the difference? Our attention to it. There is something in the functioning of the human brain and focused attention that causes matter to be in a certain way.
This does not mean Harry Potter stuff. Nobody's playing Quidditch out there using real magic. You're not going to go, Brozam Kobar, and have your rocks fly upward or this kind of stuff.
Applying these ancient powers and techniques is not as easy as Harry Potter waving a wand. It has everything to do with one's own consciousness and one's own ability to harmonize that consciousness with the universal consciousness.
Another compelling idea about the lower mind is that it acts as a lens for whatever it is aligned with, and so can be put in the service of body, emotions, or the higher aspects of the psyche.
Once we figure out who we are as a spiritual being, then we get to, well, why am I here? And what am I supposed to do? And this involves bringing, again, that spiritual life into actuality here. And by the way, that as above, so below, it's not as above, so here. As above, so below. That implies a middle. And the middle is humanity. The middle is where humanity stands. And our job is to take the patterns of the big and build them into the small.
The universe is full of conscious intention, and those intentions are sometimes smaller subsets and sometimes larger subsets, all manifesting. And humans do this, and we intend things, and we draw matter and energy into form, and we draw magnetically people, places, things, ideas, and events, and the quantum fields into manifestation through other people's intentions and through literally fields, and create. And I think that the universe is created this way, and our solar system is created this way. And even though there's an evolution to intention and evolution to consciousness, there's not a Darwinian evolution on the planet, but a conscious evolution, giving rise to perpetually upgraded forms, quantum jumps in forms, quantum leaps. And so creation is an intention process and a manifestation of a clear intention. I know whoever has the most certainty rules the game, and whoever has the most clear intention and the most certainty of will tends to grab the matter out of the universe to create. If you have two people both doing similar things, and one has more clear intent, more vivid vision, more articulate communication, and more powerful intention, and have more drive and purpose behind it, those who have, more is given. Those who haven't, more is taken away. The energy and matter that this person is creating with will be, in a sense, consumed by the ones who have more intention. Kind of like a merger and acquisition of a company that would be absorbed into it. And I believe creation is an intention game. And I believe the universe is constantly intending at all levels of manifestation and de-intending. And I see it as a living transforming universe of intention.